Okay, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. Today is Monday, February 24th, and this is a meeting of the Cedar Rapids Community School District Board of Education. This is a work session. We're going to go ahead and approve the agenda. Can someone read that motion for me, Keith?
I move that the agenda of Monday, February 24, 2014 Board of Education meeting be approved as set forth, and that each item is considered ready for discussion and/or action.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, this is a roll call action.
Director Rosenthal. Aye. Director Laverty.
Aye.
Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Witt.
Aye.
Director Westerkamp.
Aye.
President Meisterling.
Aye. We're going to go ahead and open a public hearing for the sale of district property, and I'm going to combine both of those properties together in one. This will be property located 80th Street and Worcester Road Northwest, and the sale of Lincoln School property. Laurel, have you received anything regarding these properties?
I have received nothing.
Okay. I do have a request from someone in the public to address us. Larry, you want to go ahead and come up?
Lawrence Winklowski, 4234 Morrell Road, Northeast, Cedar Rapids. The purpose of purchasing the land 2.5 years ago was for future expansion and to hedge on rising land cost. Another reason that was given at the time of the land purchase was that we could sell the land for a profit in the future. So after a little investigation, here's some facts about the parcel of land. The purchase price for the land was $17,500 per acre, plus a $25,000 in real estate services and an unknown amount for consultants' fees for survey, environmental site assessment, and geotechnical investigation and legal services. This makes the cost of the property over $18,170 per acre. The property at the corner of 80th Street Northwest and Worcester Road has a land assessed value at the rate of $67,346 per acre. The address of the Rangers residence is 7517 Worcester Road, and the amount of the property at 7414 Worcester Road has an assessed value at $35,400 per acre. The proposal is for 8% of the total property that the district owns. When you subdivide a parcel of land, every acre does not have the same value. The part of the land in question is one of the 3 highest points on the property with road access. This makes the acreage here more valuable than the low spot on the southeast corner of the property. When you go to develop the land, additional grading will be required to meet up with the proposed access, what it would cost. Without traffic studies, we don't know if the proposed access point is the best place to have an exit or an entrance. We are not at the point to decide how to develop the property, and we do not have the time right now to invest into making the appropriate decisions. With no disrespect, when this land is developed, we will probably have a totally different school board and a different superintendent. You should not be selling the property without knowing all the facts about the future of this property. And I did say facts, not speculation. If you are inclined to sell the property, more research needs to be done about the drainage of the property and the access point. The price of the property should be much higher to cover all the costs and expenses the district has incurred and will incur until the sale is complete, along with the amount to cover any unforeseen future expenses. This is a prime example of what the community means when they say the district needs to be run more like a business. This is also a prime example of what I say have been pointing out for years about the lack of transparency and the school board not getting all the information required to make the appropriate decision. What bothers me most about the proposed sale is that for the last several months, at every board meeting, I hear that this item and that item is PEPAL-related expense and how much we need the money. Does anyone here think it is okay to sell any asset below market value or for a loss? And then There is all the employees' time invested in the process. I'm so happy they work for nothing. Facts are clear. You don't sell the property.
Would anyone else like to address our board regarding the sale of district property? Seeing none, this hearing is closed. Next is superintendent report.
Thank you. I'm very pleased this evening to begin my report tonight by introducing a team of students from McKinley Middle School along with Principal Steve Goodall. They are joining us tonight to share some very good news about the energy efficiency efforts at their school. And they're at the podium.
Good evening. My name is Megan Miner, and I am an 8th grade student at McKinley Middle School. I'm here with other members of the McKinley Green Team to let you know that our school has earned the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Energy Star certification. This means that our school is in the top 25% of the buildings nationwide for energy efficiency.
My name is Kuzma Clements, and I am a 6th grade student at McKinley. Some of the things our school did to earn the Energy Star included installing the energy efficient geothermal heating and cooling system, commissioned an energy audit with Alliant Energy, which identified 64,700 kilowatts of savings and $13,400 in monetary savings annually, adding those numbers up since 2010. We have saved our district $40,200. Completed renovations on the restrooms, installing new motion sensors, putting an electrical miser on staff lounge vending machine, began an extensive environmental awareness campaign throughout McKinley, so called the McKinley Environmental Club, now currently the McKinley Green Team.
Hello, my name is Jenna McGuire, and I am a 7th grader at McKinley. Buildings that earn the EPA Energy Star use about 35% less energy than typical buildings and also release 35% less carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This means that McKinley has prevented greenhouse gas emissions equal to the electricity use from 35 households for a year. Very cool. Electrical usage was reduced by 1,200 kilowatts hours total month to month. Electrical usage was reduced 5% year over year. As a result to our campaign, there was a reduction in the school's electrical usage.
Good evening. My name is Ren Grubel, and I am a 6th grader at McKinley. We all know that improving the energy efficiency is important to protecting our environment, and we are very proud that McKinley is leading the way by making our school more efficient. We actually rank in the 99th percentile for this recognition. So if we improve by just 1%, we'll be the best in the nation. Our green team this year are planning for the exciting things to do at McKinley to save our district and also bring awareness to our students and families to save our planet, like increasing our recycling products, blackouts, and gardening. We would like to also thank the Kirkwood SIFE program, Students in Free Enterprise, Alliant Energy, and Sam's Club. Without their hard work and collaborative partnership, this award would not be possible. McKinley was one of the only 8 teams nationally selected as Sam's Club Challenge finalist, one of 3 Sam's Environmental Challenge National champions. We were awarded the A.I. Smith Special Service to Education Award for our campaign.
Wow.
Great.
Does the board have any questions or comments? Gary?
Thank you for your excellent presentation. Did I hear you mention that one of the things you were looking at maybe for this year was to incorporate a garden at the school? Is that right? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
And that's something you're planning on doing in this spring, or, very good.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I work for Alliant Energy, and I'm always looking for buildings and facilities around our service territory to take advantage of energy efficiency. So this is a perfect example of how you can do that and the money that you can save, and we very much appreciate that from the board perspective. So thank you, and thank you for coming out and sharing that story with us, and I love your green shirts. Thank you again.
Very good. That's the first time I've seen the podium move.
Yeah,
It was interesting.
it works.
Next, we recently learned that the Iowa Department of Education nominated Washington High School as a finalist for the 2014 Iowa College and Career Readiness Recognition Program. Washington finished second among nearly 400 Iowa high schools. This award honors schools that have advanced the goals of getting all graduates ready for success in college or the workplace. Next, Metro High School robotics team represented First Tech Challenge Iowa at the governor's recent STEM Summit. STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. During the event, the team demonstrated their robotics project to legislators and also took the opportunity to share samples of their chocolate candy made by Metro students. Metro will also host a STEM night February 25th at the Cedar Rapids Public Library. The event will feature activities focused on careers in science, technology, engineering, and math. The program will be held from 4 to 8 p.m. Next, this is really 2 events culminated in one announcement. The Washington High School Wind Symphony has been selected to perform a concert at the annual convention of the Iowa Bandmasters Association this spring. Being selected to perform at the Bandmasters event is considered a state championship among Iowa high school bands. Also, the Kennedy High School Women's Chorus has been chosen to perform at the North Central American Choral Directors Association convention next month in Des Moines. This is one of the highest honors a choir can receive. Both of these are fine examples of our outstanding fine and performing arts programs. On Wednesday of this week, 25 high school students and middle school students will participate in the district's first Big Hackathon event organized by the Big Ideas program. We will have 9 teachers visiting us during the day to observe and learn more about how competency-based educational environments work. During the hacking event, students will will work with 1 or more of 5 community and/or technology projects of interest to them. They will hear an overview of the project or problem. They will spend the day hacking on it, and they will look to build a website for the project. At the end of the day, the students will share their work with the owners of the projects and suggest next steps. Response has been overwhelming, and the BIG will likely run an event for middle school students later. 2 quick announcements. Reminder that Registration for 1415 preschool, alternative education, and kindergarten will be held Friday, March 7th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. here at the ELSC. Details are on the district website. And the annual Parent and Employee Climate Survey will be available through February 28th. Links went out through email and can also be found on the district's website. Thank you.
Good news about our schools. Thank you for sharing that with us. Board reports? Not one board report. Sure. Ann?
Well, just to point out, last week was the first funnel week, and I think many of us have received emails from both ISB and UEN on the status of numerous issues. And as they were quite lengthy, I'm not going to read them to you because I believe you all got them. But I just did want to remind you that it's funnel week, and the allowable growth is still on the table, as well as some other things we're concerned about. So that's all.
Thank you. Yep, I encourage people that are in the audience and listening today to look at some of those bills pertaining to public education, and please voice your opinions and share your concerns with your legislators. Okay, next is communications, delegations, and petitions. I do have two requests. Lawrence Winkowski.
Oh, yeah, Lawrence Winkowski, 4234 Morrill Road. And yeah, after reading the article in the Gazette about what goes on in Iowa City school board meetings, we should be doing group hugs. And that, some of the students think we have a ghetto in Cedar Rapids. They also believe that students who steal from others or do drugs or make other poor choices are from the ghetto. Should Cougars, Jayhawks, or Warriors be the brand for education in our district? Does education have a color? I'm not here to offend anybody. I'm just here to plant a seed for discussion on a more productive way to use days in our instructional year. If I was going to put a brand on education in our district, I would look at the SIAC presentation, which will definitely provide appropriate words for branding. If I was going to choose a color that represents education, I'd probably choose green because I think it represents prosperity. In order to change and improve our education system, we need to remove branding and color from all decisions made within the district. Every day must be used for a day for education. We cannot give way to individuals or groups who think branding, ethnicity, or special interest is more important than the quality of education for all students. By having a better plan and telling people no, this can be accomplished. Recently, I asked my daughter if she knew who Susan B. Anthony was. She said she never heard of her. Great people do their service to protect and improve our country, not for the accolades, but because of the internal joy and the understanding that it is a privilege to serve the community. Dr. Martin Luther King was one of the great Americans that our country has had and will continue to have. One of the things he supported was education. So why do we disrespect him by closing schools on a day saying it's in his honor? However, we do limit that honor since we still hold sporting events in the evening. Our community and school district does more to celebrate Halloween than it does to honor Dr. Martin Luther King or any other great Americans, including our own Mrs. Viola Gibson. People complained that this day was used as a weather makeup day, and the school district gave in. Let's respect Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and all great Americans with action. I recommend that Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday be a school day where all students spend part of the day learning about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In grades K through 8, part of the time should be used to learn about other great Americans who peacefully work towards promoting change in our country. Another part of the day could also be used to work on service projects, and service projects are only limited by one's imagination. After part of the day in the classroom, high school students should spend 2 to 4 hours out in the community providing service. Many service projects could take place even with a snow day. Let us all change the meaning of Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday by teaching our children empathy and respect for all, independent of their social classes and ethnicity. Our country has turned most holidays into retail events and entitlements. We need to put part of the Thanksgiving break, President's Day, and all of Good Friday back into the calendar and respect Dr. Martin Luther King's Jr. with education and service, and not with shopping, playing video games, watching TV, or taking selfies.
Okay, thank you. Next is Sue Clapp.
Good evening, Sue Clapp, 2242 Evergreen Street Northeast. Tonight I'm pleased to share with you more recognitions our employees have received. First, Carla Riley was recently selected by the National Education Association to serve as one of 2 Iowa Teacher Ambassadors for the Smarter Balanced Alignment Consortium project. Carla is a facilitator in our Office of Learning and Leadership for Professional Development. She works closely with our elementary instructional coaches this year and with all buildings on their school improvement plans. Carla has spent 2 days learning about the Smarter Balanced Assessments and formative assessment process and the knowledge, skills, abilities, and learning progressions the students need to acquire to make progress towards college and career readiness. There will be ongoing training and learning over the next 11 months for Carla, and she will be sharing that with the teachers in our district. Secondly, this month it was announced that Ann Hagee has been named the Education Support Professional of the Year by the Iowa State Education Association. Ann has been employed by our district for 14 years and currently is a paraeducator in the PE department at Roosevelt Middle School. Ann has had a positive impact on many, and in particular those with the greatest need. Ann is very visible and accessible to her students, and she attends many of their after-school activities, which they love. She recently encouraged a group of educators from Roosevelt to volunteer for the HD Youth Christmas Dinner, which serves hundreds of people who may otherwise not get a Christmas meal or gifts for their children. She started a clothes closet at Roosevelt to help those students with basic clothing needs. Her dedication to helping the students and staff is impressive, to say the least. She's able to break down barriers with her genuine, caring, outgoing personality and a great sense of humor, for any of you who've worked with her on bargaining. Having a second job at Mercy Hospital and having 4 daughters attend Cedar Rapids Public Schools, Ann knows and makes positive relationships with a large number of people in the community. People know she is proud to be an education support professional. She shares what that means for those who don't know, and she continues to make people see the value of ESPs. Ann has played a huge role as far as showing people what a caring, dedicated paraeducator can do to help students be successful in the classroom and beyond those walls. She has and continues to earn the respect of teachers and administrators with her valuable skills, willingness to help wherever needed, and her positive attitude. Congratulations to Ann Hagee for being our ESP of the Year.
Thank you, Sue. I just want you to know, from my perspective, hearing you talk about our staff each and every meeting, I really appreciate it. And I started school visits. I know John's done his. When we get out in our schools and we see staff in action, we're just so proud. So thank you for sharing good news about staff. Appreciate it. Next is our consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Any items that you'd like to discuss or pull? Seeing none, this is a roll call action due to the personnel report.
Director Laverty. Aye. Director Rosenthal. Aye. Director Westerkamp.
Aye.
Director Witt. Aye. Director Anhalt.
Aye.
President Meisterling.
Aye. Okay, next I'm going to turn this over to Dave Benson to talk about sale of district property located at 80th Street and Worcester Road Northwest.
It's recommended by administration that the board approve the sale of 3 acres of ground located adjacent to the county's park for the expansion of a facility that the county needs. That recommendation is, had a hearing and is part of the board packet.
Any questions from the board? Comments? Ann?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could respond to some of Mr. Winkowski's concerns of as far as the price and if there's any concerns related to the accessibility of the property, since this is one of the pieces along the road.
Right. Regarding the accessibility, we have an agreement to relocate the drive for the maintenance facility such that it would facilitate our future development. That was shown on the plans.
Okay.
Regarding the cost, this land was acquired for a public purpose by the school district. We did not intend to profit, in my view, for its use for another public agency. And the county has requested this purchase, and I recommend that we do that at the cost. They'll pick up the ancillary cost of platting and any legal cost associated with the sale. But this land is now going from one public purpose to another.
Okay, thank you.
Keith?
I also asked some questions, and we've also put a first right of refusal in the offer that's there. I asked some questions about why are they buying our land when they just bought land there and it's for an expansion. It would cost them a lot more money. And we brought up some issues about the buffering and chemicals and use and so on that have all been put into this. But I think more importantly is this cooperation between us and the county. There's a long-term agreement that's being set up, I understand, of use of that park area with the school district. So I think the school district, initially, we looked at that site because of that park there and all the research can take place with what they're doing in the park. And so I think this is part of future cooperation that hopefully we'll have with the county on the use of that park. And some of these points are valid, that maybe it could be sold for a little bit more, but I think we have to look beyond that of what we're trying to do with this whole site.
Right. This actually is a county park, and it is expanding, but it is located within the city. So I view this as intergovernmental cooperation at its highest level. We're working with the county to hold their costs down. We intend to be the beneficiary of their park expansion in the future. As noted, this is a relatively flat site. If you've been out there, there may be highs and lows on the site, but it does not have a significant drainage problem in my experience that cannot be overcome to be built on. And there's sufficient land to build, again, in my experience, either a multi-level school or what I refer to as a ranch school, which is sprawled out on one floor, one level.
Okay, John?
I agree with what you've all said. I think that this is a win-win for everyone involved and for the future of my children and all of our kids here in Cedar Rapids. So I'm definitely in favor of this.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Gary?
Just in agreement with everything that's said. It's one taxpaying group helping another. It's the taxpayers in Lynn County that are ultimately footing the bill for this. And so, and again, what it will do to improve our own property and the fact that the access it will have and the value of having the county property, the county park right there, it will be a great educational experience. So it's a win-win situation.
Okay, good. Alan, did you want to comment? Okay, it is recommended that we do approve this. Can I have a motion for that recommendation?
You're putting these two together, right? Is that right?
No.
No. Oh, I thought that's what.
Sorry,
Okay.
no.
For the hearing we did.
Okay, so this is just on the one. Okay, all right. Well, I move to approve the resolution for the sale of this property as written.
Okay, is there a second, please?
Second.
So roll call action?
Director Anhalt,
Aye.
Director Witt,
Aye.
Director Westerkamp,
Aye.
Director Rosenthal,
Aye.
Director Laverty,
Aye.
President Meisterling.
Aye. Dave, I'll give this back to you for the sale of Lincoln School property.
We have a contract agreed upon for the sale of Lincoln property. I believe we have some representatives here today from the purchaser of the Sanctuary Church. It is the administrative recommendation that the sale of Lincoln property should occur pursuant to the recommendation in the board packet.
Okay. Comments or questions from the board? Ann?
Yeah, in our consent agenda, I just had a question about the water main and
I'm
the
sorry.
easement. A question on the easement for the water main, because we set a hearing, and I just want to understand how that works with us granting an easement, and then we're selling the property all at the same time. It's just, so if you could clarify that, or you or somebody could clarify that.
The easement will follow at a subsequent board meeting, but there has been an addendum to the purchase agreement signed by Sanctuary Ministries representative on the easement. And the easement is a request from the city of Cedar Rapids to provide a route for a water main in that area. So the easement is recognized by our buyer and is agreed to in our addendum to the purchase agreement, recognizing that the easement timing will trail the actual approval by the Board of Education for the sale of the Lincoln property.
Yeah, when the easement issue came up, I immediately asked Mr. Graham to get a hold of our real estate person and then communicate with the buyer so that everybody was knowledgeable, and we've done everything we can to make sure that everybody is aware and have signed off on our intent to recommend the easement so the city can improve water service to that area.
Okay. John?
I'm just pleased that we've been able to find buyers that are willing to take on this historic property and preserve something that I think a lot of people were hoping we could save from the wrecking ball, and we've done that, and for a very positive purpose. I think the services that you'll provide to our community and to our children in the community are invaluable, and really appreciate what the district and its representatives have done to find such a buyer, so thank you.
Other comments? Okay, I'd entertain a motion then to go ahead and approve this.
I move to approve the resolution for the sale of this property as written.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. This is a roll call action.
Aye.
Director Rosenthal,
Aye.
Director Laverty,
Aye.
Director Anhalt,
Aye.
Director Witt,
Aye.
President Meisterling.
Thank you. Next, I'll keep this with you, Dave and Laurel, to talk about policy manual review and revisions.
Thank you. This evening, we have some policy regulations and procedures for the board's consideration. These items have all been reviewed by the Policy Review Committee, have gone on to Superintendent's Cabinet. Most of the proposed revisions come as a result of changes to state and federal law, a change in current district practice, and to keep up to date as required by Iowa Code. This evening, there are quite a few for your review, but we would be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? John?
Just before this comes back to us, and I had sent Dave a question and Steve responded, I would like a little bit more clarification. You don't have to do it now, but a little bit more clarification on the other employees that have use of district vehicles. So the benefits, I'd like to understand that better and what the cost involved with that is. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We'll do that.
So clarification, are you looking for that to come back to the board, or if this, because it is a regulation, would then not come back because it is not a policy? So what would be your pleasure?
Well, it's something that I'm curious about, so I don't know how you want to proceed with it, but it's
Okay.
an answer I'd like to have, so.
Well, we can always bring it back if the explanation is not sufficient.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and go into our work session, and we'll start with a discussion regarding this beautiful, wonderful winter that we are all continuing to experience.
Yes. Inclement weather. We've had a mix of inclement weather as I look out, and it's supposed to be snowing now, and it's not yet. Just a few comments before the board's discussion. We have a calendar, and it calls for certain activities to take place in certain times, and we publicize that well ahead so that our community can have that information and be assured to make plans. I typically do not like to have this discussion until after spring break, because we still have the last few days of February and the first few weeks of March to get through. It is possible in this climate to have an April surprise, but that's why they call them April surprises, because we don't think we're going to have that kind of inclement weather in April. So if you get to spring break, you have some assurance that the rest of the year is going to go in accordance with the published calendar. We have published a calendar, and I want to state something. We started about a week later than most of our contemporaries in the Lynn County area or in the corridor. And we did that because we have a tradition of setting that calendar on the basis of ending the first trimester before Thanksgiving. And so you back up your days, and then you set your start calendar, and the calendar rolls forward. And that, in fact, is how we have built, and the board has approved, after a public hearing, the calendar for 14-15. What that means is we were already going late. And now we've had 6 inclement weather days, which push out into the second week of June. We are caught this year on the horns of a change, and many people don't understand the change. Right now, state law requires us to have 180 5.5-hour school days, or there's some modifications that can occur because of either inclement weather, late starts, or early dismissals for professional development. But it's basically 180 5.5-hour school days. Next year, if we certify our calendar and use one of the options that will be available, which will be to certify for 1,080 hours of instruction, we as a local district have much more control over hours. And in fact, I've used hours in previous superintendencies where when we get caught in these kind of situations and we don't want to go late into June, we could add time to the school calendar. That is not an official option available to us, and that question has been posed to the director of the Department of Education, and that's the official reply, is this year that option is not available.
Yeah.
Okay? And but next year it would be. So there's light at the end of that tunnel. And the final thing I would say to you, in your discussion of calendar options, certainly we have spring break. Certainly Saturdays have been talked about. There is something that I refer to as the law of unintended consequences. Because we've published this calendar and people are relying on it, and we are now to the next to the last day, we're now to June 12th of the scheduled times designated for inclement weather makeup, and we are using 2 days during the year that were scheduled for that purpose. If we do anything different, there will be individuals whose personal schedules will be adversely affected. Now, that doesn't mean we can't have Saturday school. It doesn't mean we couldn't use some spring break days. It simply means that there will be unintended consequences for individual families that have relied on our published calendar to make plans. So with that, I know this has been a topic, it's been a topic covered extensively by the print and electronic media, and it is a topic that our teachers and our parents are keenly interested in. But right now, I believe that the superintendency is empowered to manage the calendar as published, and that means we would go to Thursday, June 12th.
Let's talk about that.
So I've talked to several parents. I just happen to have a daughter that's in lots of activities and get the chance to speak with parents. And questions came up about how this relates to the teacher's contract. So there's 190 some days, and we have a lot of early outs on Wednesdays and some other days in there. So is any of that time a possibility? Are the teachers in the contract at all flexible so that the students could be gaining those days back if needed on some of those early out days?
The early out days are already being counted as days on the 180-day calendar, and making those, having those hour and a half to 2 hours of additional time on that day will make absolutely no difference in our day count.
Okay.
Okay, Gary?
Again, this is just discussion and somewhat brainstorming. And just throw out, could we, on some days when we've canceled, it's because of difficulty of running bus schedules. Could we count it as a day and still restrict and have restricted bus schedules or eliminated bus schedules and still have it count as a school day?
I've always been reluctant to do that. I've asked about hard surface roads in this district when I arrived, and was told that was not a tradition that the district has ever done, although there are districts that are more rural than ours that do the hard surface routes only. The other element of that is we have a lot of busing related to special needs children. And if buses can't run, we would be impacting a population that we're seeking to serve because we have some regional sites, if you want to think about it in those terms, for the programs that have less students. So I would be reluctant to do that. Obviously, that's a future board discussion. If you wanted to discuss that, it would have no bearing on what we do the rest of this year.
Okay.
I have a question about graduation. I believe that you have to have so many days in for the graduation. Are we bumping up against that one of having our graduates come back?
Yes, we would have some issues for that. However, having seniors come back after graduation is very problematic. And once you set graduation, you set a whole lot of things in motion in terms of individual people, in terms of their travel, their grandparents, or whatever they're going to do. But more importantly, the venue. We get the venue locked in and it's set, and whether or not you could ever have a venue change, even if you wanted to take advantage of republishing all of the notices and things, that's just an issue that districts have to live with. When you have a large district like ours that relies on a large venues that require contracts. You had a small district, you're graduating in the local gymnasium, you might be able to have some flexibility. I just don't see we have a lot of flexibility in graduation.
And corollary of that is, the one that I've heard is the AP preparation. And I'm wondering if there's, we're brainstorming now, right? Okay, if there's any opportunity where the high schools might have additional hours or Saturday classes or something like that to help in preparation for those AP exams, which are quite important.
Mary Ellen, you've talked about schedules and finals and APs with the high school folks. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, that's a good question, Keith. That has been a frequent topic of conversation with the administration and the teachers at the high school level. It is a concern losing that many days during a trimester, and we talked about moving the finals or the finals back for a week. And really, we gathered input from the teachers and from the administrators, and the thought was that they could be flexible with what they're currently doing. And that's one of the things that teachers do best. They're very flexible with their schedules and with their learning, so that they have modified that so that we will not be changing that. And there doesn't seem to be a concern with the AP as well at this point.
And I know a lot of the AP teachers give of their own time and do AP study sessions. That's frequently occurring.
Okay, Ann?
I had a question about finals, which I think maybe you just answered, Mary Ellen. The idea of pushing the final exams back a week because the winter trimesters ends up being so much. Basically, it's like 11 weeks, and the spring is going to be 13. So, did you answer that in your answer there?
My
I was a little
answer was
confused.
that they had looked at that consideration and even talked about it early on when we had just a few days of cancellation, and they sought information via emails that went out to teachers. Department chairs had those discussions around the final schedule, and it was decided that we would move forward with the current final schedule at this point in time, and that they could modify and look in the instruction to meet those needs of the students.
So do you think in general they're squeezing the instruction into a shorter period, or might some things just, a lot of our courses are year-long, you think a lot of things will just roll into the next
A lot
term?
of our courses are year-long. The majority of our courses are year-long. So I would anticipate that that would be what would be happening. Quite often, those trimesters aren't exactly the same anyway. And when you look at schools that have semesters, those aren't exactly the same anyway. But they are looking at, they will only assess what they've instructed thus far for the finals.
Okay.
Alan?
I know we've got the issue at hand, but I'm thinking going forward next year, we got the schedule set up, and we're talking about changing the schedule the year after that and going to something different. But how can we, it sounds like the answer is to accommodate this in the future, we'll work in hours. And that'll give us the flexibility that you said earlier. Saturday seems very logical to me, but I don't know if we got an answer. Is that even doable? Like if you said, hey, we're going to do every other Saturday from here on out until we make it up, is that possible? What's the hurdle? Because that seems like a very doable thing. I know it's disruptive to people's schedules because they don't plan on that, but if we give them enough lead time, maybe 3 or 4 week lead time, by then we'd have a good handle on how many Saturdays we'd need.
Yeah, actually, I was sought out at one of the local grocery stores by a high school student wanting to know that question. And what he indicated was the schedules are set in more or less 3-week increments. So he was basically making the point to me, if we went to some Saturday makeup, that some notice would help the employers be able to schedule. The other thing, if we went to Saturday, would be to run a early out schedule and hold some professional development for teachers for the balance of the day so that students would be out earlier. We could make up days on Saturday. I would suggest that if that's the kind of the thinking of the board as a result of this discussion, that I would develop a schedule to look at. I would also suggest that we do it every other Saturday and avoid the Saturday of spring break week. That would seem to be a bad choice, just from a staffing point of view. But if you did every other Saturdays for the third trimester, you'd space out over 4 days, would space out over 2 months. And you could give adequate notice for that, and you could back off of those 4 days that are currently in June.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, Gary?
Excuse me, one other thought on that, Alan. I do want you to understand the law of unintended consequences works not only with the work schedules and the schedules for our faculty, but it also works in our classified employees. Under wage and hour laws, that day would be a day and a half. It would be time and a half for all of our classified employees.
We don't have a 40-hour window, like where I work, it's 40 hours. If you don't go over 40, you don't get time and a half.
Well, they'd be over 40 for that week.
Okay.
They'd be working 48 hours that week.
Okay.
So, and all of our contracts come into play then. So, I'm not saying that's a good or a bad reason to do it or not to do it, because certainly going into the second week of June is a problem. But I just had that thought, and I would want you to know that it would be an expensive day.
Okay.
From that regard.
Okay. John?
Did you have something, Gary?
I did.
Sorry, Gary, I apologize.
That's okay. Going back to the Saturdays, how much conflict would arise with some of our extramural or intramural extracurricular activities? I know probably once we get past spring break, our spring season start up on a lot of activities, and some of those are booked a year ahead of time as far as scheduling goes.
Well, I think there would be that, and I throw this wrinkle in too. There are religious groups in the community who view Saturday as the Sabbath. And so if we went on that kind of schedule, we would no doubt lose some students and potentially some faculty to religious observances.
John?
So you've answered a lot of my questions already, so. But the one thing that we haven't answered, so we're talking about the whole brick and mortar solution to this. Is there any sort of online solution? Is there any allowance within the law for our students to log into Canvas or some of our other services, or to be provided something on a stick and be able to take home, do at their own leisure, and come back and show that they did a certain amount of work over a certain amount of time as individual students with maybe their parents' signature that they did this?
I will give you the brick and mortar answer. I think that's an issue that will come over time in terms of alternative. The current state law requires 180 5.5-hour school days.
Building.
Seat time.
In the brick and mortar structure, being open and offering instruction. It does not require attendance. We're basically a membership-driven school finance formula. We take our membership on certain days, either regular students or special needs students, and that drives our financial formula, as opposed to some states that are average daily membership. So having a day of school in which we know that we would have lesser attendance does not financially harm the district. It just means we know that we're going to have lower attendance that day.
Anne?
Yeah, I think whatever options we do, there's going to be reduced attendance. You know, if we go into June, we have reduced attendance. If we try and do something over spring break, we have reduced attendance. If we do Saturdays, we have reduced attendance. And I guess my thoughts are just sticking with what we've published, because that's what people plan on, even though most people don't think about those makeup days at the end of the year really coming into play, and that's where we are this year. And I think the thing I would ask is if we do stick with our calendar, that in general, a lot of times our teachers have been flexible when things come up. And the issue with high school and finals at the end of the year in June means that if some students had already made plans to go to some kind of a summer seminar or academy or something like that, if they're gone, I just would hope that our faculty would work with them on that on an individual basis, because sometimes, even though we do publish those days, we've rarely ever had to use them, and some people would take the gamble that I want to go to this seminar or this college experience or whatever, pre-college, whatever, and so I think whatever we do, we're going to be missing students, and I think of the options of spring break or June or Saturday, I think actually my least favorite is Saturday, because our community and families aren't set up with the infrastructure to support school on a Saturday. You know, as far as daycare, I mean, and all the people that have to be here to make this work. We have about 2,000 employees?
About
3,000 employees. So it's not just trying to get those 17 or 16 or 17,000 kids here, it's those 3,000 employees, and that's, on a Saturday, just seems monumental to me.
Right, and that's why I was suggesting if we did that, we'd take the last 2 months and you give a full month's notice to people that we wouldn't start that system till after spring break, basically, and we could get those 4 days in April and May on some kind of schedule. There's a difficult set of circumstances any way you go. I trust that our faculty and our principals work individually with students all the time.
Yeah.
Because we have students always coming up with their own individual needs, and I believe very strongly that we have a very empathetic staff, and they will work with that. I also know from our administrative discussions, we have some individual staff considerations too, some special circumstances, and I would expect our principals to work with those staff members also, going as late as we are in June.
Gary?
Again, trying to be think out of the box and just discussion. I know how problematic it will be if we go beyond what's published as far as dates and even going to Saturday. What about the possibility, instead of a 2-hour delay, it's a 4-hour delay in extreme cases, and extend the day in order to get the hours in?
I mean, this is if we had a snow day again?
Right, yes, currently. And again, trying to preserve our calendar that's published as much as we can. Just a thought.
We could certainly discuss it.
Keith?
I think we're status quo right now. We ought to stay there, but this discussion's been good. But if we get some more, and I'm afraid we're going to, I think we got to really look hard then at all of our options and not extend another week into that next week, so to speak.
Yeah, going into that next week's really going to be a problem. We already know that there's some camps and activities that are being stepped on in terms of their typical start dates. But if we went into that next week, it would be a monumental problem.
Okay, any other comments? Ann?
So I guess the only other out-of-the-box idea is right now, there's quite a few states where the Department of Ed is authorized to declare exemptions, and so that the only way, if we wanted to go down that road, would be to talk to the legislators and see if they would empower, pass a law or change the law to allow the DE to make an exemption. From what I've read in the paper, it doesn't look like that's very likely, but I didn't know, Dave, if you've had any discussions along that line with.
We have. We've done a poll of our UEN schools because that dots the various quadrants of the state, and really winter has been very severe in the northeast, north central quadrants of the state. Out west, they really haven't had a severe winter. In fact, they're still in some drought monitoring conditions. So we don't have the advantage of having all of the state unified by having the same problem. And I would not hold out for a legislative solution at this point.
Okay, good comment.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I just wanted to know
Yeah.
what other people thought on that
Yeah,
idea.
we have looked into it.
Thank you.
I'm inclined to go along with what Ann's comments were regarding sticking with the calendar, but I think you have to have a contingency plan in place in the event that you do go into that second, or that third week of June. I would also like to see some figures regarding how much a Saturday offering would cost.
We can get that.
And then, so you'll bring this back in March? Okay. All right. Okay, thank you very much. Next, I'm going to turn this over to Trace Pickering, who's going to talk about recommendations for magnets and innovation as he's worked with the School Improvement Advisory Committee.
Hey, Dr. Benson, President Meisterling, board members. It's a pleasure to present to you the SIAC Committee's recommendation on magnet schools and innovation. And rather than hear the recommendation from me, I've asked one of the committee members and a local business person and parent to share with you the recommendation. So David Tominski will do that for you.
Welcome, David. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to press the button when I came up here. It seemed fun. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you the findings of the School Improvement Advisory Committee and its recommendations on innovation and transformation for our district. My name is David Tominski. I stand before you as an entrepreneur and a business owner. My business, Core TCS, is an advanced technology recruiting firm based in downtown Cedar Rapids. I'm also the father of 2 boys currently in the Cedar Rapids Community School District. Isaac is a 5th grader. Evan is a 2nd grader, both at Erskine Elementary School on the southeast side of town. Today I'm here as a member of the School Improvement Advisory Committee. This is a diverse group of community leaders, business people, teachers, students, and parents, all with the shared interest of identifying ways to improve our school system to ensure the best possible outcome for our children. I may be a father of only 2 boys, but I, as well as all the fellow committee members, approach this opportunity with the interest of all 16,000 kids and their families, as well as the greater community in mind. Keep moving ahead. Our charge was to review input from the community that had been gathered over the past year. We were to determine if the district should pursue magnet schools, and if so, to recommend themes, age ranges, and locations. We were asked to recommend a set of actions and design criteria that would drive this innovation and transformation. What's that? Yeah, you mind? 6 community conversations were hosted throughout the community, over 165 interactions through the Engage CR Schools website. 50-plus community members participated in Iowa Transform Ed as part of the Billy Madison project, of which I happen to be one. Students in this district provided persuasive papers on the subject. All of this helped drive SIAC committee discussion over 2 meetings. Our committee consists of 56 people from the community. Our community was put in a unique situation after the flood of 2008. I'm here to tell you that our reimagined sense of self comes in the form of Iowa's Creative Corridor, and we are passionate about what we create here. I see this in all of the communities I serve, whether it is in business, in the startup and entrepreneurial community, or education and the after-school programs that I volunteer to serve, like Cub Scouts and Lego League. We are making and creating more now in this town than I have witnessed in the past 20 years. We must not wait for someone else to show us ways to innovate inside our schools. We must lead this. We need to create what we want here for our kids and for the future of our city. To do this, we must be relentless in our efforts to engage the community, to collaborate and build this together with the community we serve. The driving question for us is and should be, what do we want for all of our children? And what kind of school will deliver that for our community? We are CR. We have a compelling reason to move forward. Our kids need to be college and career ready. Our kids need to be creativity and community ready. We all need to be competent and resilient. The School Improvement Advisory Committee presents to the board 5 recommendations for consideration. First, focus on creating personalized magnetic learning experiences for all children. Magnet schools, while a useful tool for creating the space to innovate, do not go far enough in our opinion. Ultimately, every child in the district must have access to personalized learning experiences. Experiences based upon their passions and interests, driving rigorous learning and achievement. Experiences that are more project and community-based and help children not only demonstrate what they know, but that they are competent actors in contextually rich environments, dilemmas, and situations. Building and launching various prototypes of personalized magnetic learning experiences will increase the level of expectation and excitement about this work and help sustain this work and effort. We must continue to communicate and engage the community in this conversation. Second, key design criteria must guide the design and implementation of magnet schools to ensure they're transformative vehicles. Rather than recommending particular schools, areas, and themes, we opted to put forth a set of design criteria that may serve the district and community better moving forward. As such, we recommend any magnet school meet specific criteria. We have outlined 13 design criteria, and the details are documented in the full SIAC recommendation submitted to the board. Third, we must be relentless and constant engaging the community in conversation about district efforts to transform. Simply declaring SIAC as approved magnet schools or the creation of personalized magnetic learning experiences is insufficient. This work involves major change, must include the community at every step. As such, we recommend ongoing community conversations and involvement aligned to the community building and engagement work we see happening throughout our community. Many on the committee are active community builders and can be a part of this work. It shouldn't come solely from the district personnel. It is important the district and community continue to build the emerging ecosystem, driving the We Create Here work. We outlined several approaches to this in the full SIAC recommendations submitted to the board. Fourth, we need to continue to seed, incubate, germinate, and iterate, break the mold learning environments, and innovate and innovations. We need to be quick, but we do not need to hurry. The best way for the community to see their vision of the future is to create small examples of that future today. The Big Idea program is one model to achieve community's desires. Strong connections to Kirkwood and K-16 learning, competency-based education, effective grading practices, teacher leadership grants, teacher coaching and mentoring programs all are important steps in transforming and innovating education. We need to start where we can be quick and agile. We need to take the prototypes from programs like BIG and find places to implement them. We need to engage immediately in the planning, communicating, and preparing for larger scale designs. And fifth, we need to create resource models to ensure sustainability and viability moving forward. Each effort must include a resource model for how it impacts district resources and allocations moving forward. It is important to create resource models helping to show how the district will fund the development, launch, sustainability, and scalability moving forward. A first step in this effort must be a board commitment to funding and supporting innovative work in the district. It need not be a large amount during these tough times, but must be enough to show willingness and commitment. Do not allow innovative work to get cut or minimized. Find ways to incentivize faculty, community partnerships, and prototypes. We understand the economic realities of the budget. We recognize the need for to both improve upon existing systems and innovate towards a new one. Despite this, we expect to see more and more emphasis placed upon funding the future rather than the past in terms of practices and initiatives. Trace, do you want to show them the administrative look forward?
So we took a look at recommendations, and from an administrative point of view, we try to point to a few things that you might consider. And so we put together a 3-year look forward. These again are just recommendations and draft. You can see draft written across there. But we thought the 14-15 school year, to make the SIAC recommendation come alive, find ways to expand the Big Ideas program, look at a school within a school prototype at the middle school. We're in conversations about doing something like that at Roosevelt Middle School with a group of kids and faculty. Continue to expand the effective grading practices work that's going on, and planning for elementary magnets. 15-16 then would see us opening elementary magnets iterating again on the big ideas, expanding our prototypes at the middle school, and again, continuing effective grading moving forward. And the ultimate picture with this is fully competency-based learning systems. 16 and 17 might be a bit aggressive, but that would be great to have that. And then perhaps we're looking at a middle school magnet by that time as well. A lot of what the SIAC committee wanted to make sure is if we gave kids that experience and they matriculate to the next level, that there's something there for them. So that's why you see in initial thinking things happening at all three levels.
So these recommendations reflect the input gathered from the community, our conversations as a committee, and the work of so many already underway in this direction. With great respect and on behalf of the entire SIAC committee, we thank you sincerely for the opportunity to serve the community. Be happy to answer any questions.
Perhaps you could acknowledge the other members of the SIAC committee.
Is any SIAC committee members here?
Great, thank you.
Carla, too.
Carla?
Oh, yeah, I should stand too. Thank you, David. Good presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Comments, questions from the board? John?
So one of the things, Trace, when we went into this as a board and the discussion, I appreciate the broad nature and kind of giving us some scope to work in magnetic, learning for all students and really focusing on experiences for individual students is great. When we went into this, one of the concepts was we wanted to know some specific ideas for magnet schools, starting at elementary and moving up into middle schools. And it seems like that's sort of gotten pushed off to next year. What is the plan for the board to actually get some specifics? We've got parents that are hearing about this, and they're asking us, I think, as board members, what is this? There's a lot of excitement about this. We want to keep the momentum going, but if this keeps dragging on for another year, 2 years, there's just some concern, I think, that this might lose some of its momentum.
Yeah, the committee felt pretty strongly that they weren't necessarily in the best position to make the recommendation, so they came up with a criteria that they felt we should follow. And as we've been looking at that criteria over the last few weeks, we see several schools fitting in that. The primary one being Johnson School of the Arts fits the criteria and makes a lot of sense for a place to start. Our magnet school expert that we've had in is saying if you're going to start one, start two. The work isn't that much more, and it gives the community more options and so forth. So I think our team would be recommending then a STEM school at the elementary level, and then applying this criteria and determining which buildings, which parts of the community might be best served by that STEM, and engaging the faculty and principals in those buildings as well to see where the interest lies. So I think you're looking at Johnson School of the Arts would be a pretty solid one, and then quickly yet this school year trying to identify where that next magnet might be, because 18 months may seem like a long time to reconfigure a school for a magnet, but it's going to take a lot of work to get there from here. So we want to get started quickly.
I think there's two other things that are interplaying there, John, with your question. One is the teacher leadership grant opportunity. I think there's going to be a plethora of opportunities for our teachers to really get engaged in leadership opportunities. And I know that our application that Mary Ellen put together with her team and in consultation with CREA really has an emphasis on that. So we think that if we're a recipient of that this year, that will pay real dividends in moving us quickly forward. And the other thing that David mentioned, and I would want the SIAC committee members here to understand, is the executive administration has been meeting regarding budgetary issues, and we fully intend to provide seed money for the necessary staff development activities. to be able to kick those magnet schools off in 15, 16 in a very planned and purposeful way. We'll be sending teams out, we'll be doing trainings, we'll be bringing experts in, and we absolutely hear you that will take some seed money, and that is very definitely in our executive plans for a budget to support this activity for the 14-15 school year.
So you're planning for something 14-15?
For the seed money for training.
For 15-16?
Staff development
Implementation.
for
Okay.
15-16 implementation.
Okay. Alan?
I'm glad to hear all this. It's very exciting. I know the elementary schools, we looked at getting them Project Lead the Way as far as their, and I had breakfast last Wednesday with the president of Project Lead the Way, a guy named Vince Bertram, and I sat right next to him, of course, and didn't let him away from me the whole time. But he got an earful, and I told him about the school district and how we're trying to move in this magnet direction. And he thought it sounded like a great idea. I didn't know about the STEM focus. That was one of the things you brought up tonight. But bottom line is there's a lot of support structure out there for this in an elementary school and to create a STEM structure. So there's not like we got to create our own curriculum. And so he made a point that anytime we're ready and we get Rockwell Collins or whoever to help pay for something like that, because I know they've been a big supporter in the past for STEM, let him know, and he'd be glad to help us out.
Gary?
Compliment the SIAC committee and Trace on, I think you did a good job of putting together what I attended three, I guess, of the magnet conversations, and I think you summarized it very well. There is a desire from the community to do this. My question is that, and I am supportive of going in this direction, but my question is, I believe one of the reasons that we have not been able to move over the last 10 years in some of these directions is not because of a lack of desire by educational staff, but by restrictions put on by requirements, testing, federal requirements, and so on, that has limited our ability to be more creative and innovative in our instruction and in our scope. How does that enter in? How, as we move forward, those restrictions don't seem to be going away in the immediate future. How do we move forward under those restrictions?
I think our greatest hope at this point in time is the competency-based education legislation that's on the books and in the works. That's going to give us the flexibility we need to operate some of these magnets and do the Big Idea School and the middle school prototype that's going to be heavily focused on project-based learning and that. The other thing that we can do as a district, if we run up against something, is we can request a waiver and request that the state director give us a waiver on one thing or another, and we would use that if we need to. But honestly, I think there's a pathway for us to get this accomplished.
I agree with that. I think the director now, Dr. Buck, has the authority to move some of these ideas forward from the political sense with the governor's office. And I also see some very strong legislative support for some of these initiatives. Senator Hogue, for example, has offered on several occasions to move legislation forward if we think there's something blocking us from being innovative. And there are certainly other legislators, and I don't believe this is a partisan issue. I think there's some genuine interest in seeing this go forward across leadership in Des Moines and among political leaders. So I'm not given to making too many optimistic statements when it comes to public policy, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to do these things. And when we come up against a problem, we're going to creatively find a solution.
John?
I asked this earlier in another context, but with brick and mortars, buildings, did the SIAC talk about options for online learning? I know since I've been on the board, Keith has brought up the issue of options for online learning. It seems to be a hot topic right now. And do we have to have these in buildings, or can these be other things that relate to technology?
I think that was one of the most exciting things to come out of the SIAC committees. That was one of the first assumptions they challenged. It's like, we cannot have attractive magnetic learning experiences for kids all across the community if we restrict our thinking to buildings. And so they were adamant about, it's great to have magnets in buildings, we get it, but there needs to be some prototypes out there for schools without walls. I think they see BIG as that a prototype that can be that kind of place where it isn't about where it's at, it's that it's happening in the community in that. So I think you'll see that the SIAC committee really is encouraging us and pushing us to not only do brick and mortar, but to look at online blended learning, schools without walls opportunities for kids.
I think that's terrific, and I think, as a board, we've had lots of discussions about technology and where we need to be with technology, collaboration with our other governmental partners in the city of Cedar Rapids and the county of Lynn County. So moving these things forward and getting that technology in the kids' hands and having access at home and school are at least what I've seen as our priorities. So if this can tie into it, that's terrific.
I just want to compliment Lori and everyone else that got Canvas going. My daughter was sick for 2 days. She was 13 years old, 8th grader at McKinley, and she was able to do her work at home. A lot of these kids are getting these assignments, and I don't think you can have a magnet school without the Canvas. So we've got some infrastructure set up now that is a big deal. Right now it's still a learning curve. We're at the bottom of the curve, but I appreciate what you've done to get that off the ground because it is making a difference in kids' lives.
Good. I want to amplify one additional comment, John. I think there's a component or a place for the board in this discussion too, particularly related to high school graduation requirements. When we did a presentation down at the Economic Alliance, one of the business people said, okay, this is fine, but where's the scalability and where's the sustainability to these kinds of ideas? And I immediately seized on graduation requirements as being one of the places that we need to look, and that's a policy decision of the Board of Education. Because there are districts that do either some kind of public service element to graduation or project-based learning, senior thesis, call it what you want. There are ways to do that. So if this board wants to be seen as progressively supporting these concepts, I think that review of that policy in light of a high school requirement for some kind of exterior outside the four walls experience would be a good thing for the board to discuss at a future time.
Okay. Good idea. Let's do that. Other comments? Thank you to all of those in the room that are on the SIAC committee. Appreciate your time. I'm a member of that committee as well, and I can assure you that the School Without Walls, the technology, that whole conversation was dominant throughout our conversation. So they're definitely thinking in that direction. Thank you for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'm going to turn this over to Steve Graham to talk about the fiscal year 2014-15 budget update.
Thank you, Dr. Benson, members of the board, President Meisterling. We have some updated information to share regarding our fiscal 14 budget. First of all, it is really two separate processes going on simultaneously. We have our revenue budget with a deadline of the 15th of April for certification. That's where our property tax levy rate is set, and so it's a real focus on the revenue side of the equation. And then we have our budget line item process, which is traditionally concluded by the 30th of June. So a line item budget is presented to the Board of Education that incorporates both the revenue as well as the spending side of the equation. So the timelines for the certified budget process, and again, this is the revenue side of the budget, is our update today. But we have 2 board meetings coming up the 10th of March where we would have the board take action to set a public hearing for the certification of the budget and hold that public hearing on the 7th of April. And that is our lone opportunity in the board schedule to certify the budget by the 15th of April. So we've got today and 2 more days, or 2 more board touch points with our fiscal 15 budget. So what's new for fiscal 15? Well, we've got some new terminology. We've got this new terminology called the percent of growth, which is formerly known as allowable growth. And for fiscal 15, we have a 4% allowable growth, which equates to a 3.32% new money. This is based upon our enrollment changes and the one-time $2 million state supplemental funding for the current fiscal year, which sunsets after this fiscal year is ended. So it all boils down to a 3.32% increase in new money, which is good. It's the first time we've had an increase in new money for a long time in this district because of our declining enrollment. Also, not necessarily so new, but new in fiscal 14, was the legislature is going to be paying for every incremental increase in this allowable growth by state aid. So this is an attempt by the legislature to give some relief to the local property tax. And so fiscal 15 is the second year of this program. Our percent of growth for fiscal 16, we by law should have known within the first 30 days of the state legislature, and we don't know at this point in time, and that's at this point we just keep watching what's happening in Des Moines for any announcement in that regard. Also new for fiscal 15 is also property tax relief through the decrease of what commercial industrial property tax have as taxable valuation. For many years, it's been 100% of assessed valuation. Assessed valuation equals taxable valuation. Now we're moving to 95% of assessed valuation for both commercial and industrial property. And in 2016 and beyond, it will be 90%. So there will be property tax relief as a result of these measures.
Can you go back one slide?
Sure.
I think the April 7th will be the 14th.
Oh, thank you very much. That is an error. So
we'll hold
sorry.
our meeting and certify our budget and then certify it the next day on the 15th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good catch. Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah.
Just as far as the, is all this slides just referring to what we call our general fund? As far as those property tax numbers, or would the state reimburse local governments for lost property taxes? Does that apply to the management fund and the PEPAL fund as well?
It applies to all funds, management fund and PEPAL
Okay.
fund included.
All right, thank
Yes.
Ever?
Well, we keep watching, and we hope, and we see what happens in the future, but I don't think I would want to go out there on a limb and say this is forever.
Well, but the law's set up that it doesn't expire, so it's until they change the allocation.
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. I mean, some things are set up with a termination date, so right now this one doesn't have one, I guess.
That is correct. There's a limit to the amount of money. Once the state limit is hit, then there will be no additional increase in the property tax rebate back to the commercial and industrial property interest. And I don't have that number in my mind, but there is a state limit on the amount of relief available. So new considerations for fiscal 15. We have what you'll be hearing more about, and I've just got one slide on this concept right now, and it's the concept of reducing the pressure on the general fund budget through a mechanism called the equipment breakdown insurance program, where we would propose to levy a property tax to pay for a premium for insurance that would provide for payment of breakdown qualifying equipment, but the reimbursement's going into the general fund. It is a tax on the management fund with reimbursements revenues going into the general fund. That is the concept. And there are two competing writers out there that we are working with to get the highest value that we can get out of either one of these companies that provide this equipment breakdown insurance program, and that's a work in progress right now. And so there'll be a point in time where we'll be bringing to you a proposal on a equipment breakdown insurance and give you data on how much money this would mean in terms of the general fund relief going forward. So key budget fundamentals, really the first bullet point is to follow those legal certification requirements. Again, publication and certification of the budget prior to or on the 15th of April. The second bullet is to stabilize the general fund spending authority reserves. And you're going to see in just the next slide a picture of reserve trends, both the spending authority reserve trends as well as our fund balance reserve trends in fiscal 14 and fiscal 15. The assumption here is we have a $6 million budget adjustment package in the numbers that you're going to see. Now, when I say budget adjustments, this isn't merely looking at the reduction of expenditures, it's a look also at the revenue side of the equation, what we can do as a district to increase our revenues. And then the third bullet point is to maintain that cash reserve levy. We have currently a $13.7 million cash reserve levy, and you'll see in the next slide the impact of maintaining that in fiscal 15. And then the final bullet, which is a very, very important piece, is to maintain a stable property tax levy rate going forward. To do all of this and to maintain that stable property tax levy rate. So this graph has two different colored bars. It has the gold colored bar, which is this spending authority reserve trend. And then we have the green colored bar, which is the fund balance reserve trend. And the fund balance is sort of like this cash balance concept. We have the concept of cash, and we have the concept of spending authority. And you'll see that from fiscal 11 forward, that there has been a decline in our actual spending authority reserve as well as our fund balance reserve. For the current fiscal year, we're predicting to end our this year with a $4.28 million spending authority reserve and a $6 million fund balance or cash reserve. Now, if we maintain a $13.7 million cash reserve levy and implement a $6 million budget adjustment package, we would see a stabilization of our spending authority reserve. It would be a flat line. It would be literally unchanged in fiscal 15, and this is on June the 30th of 2015. The fund balance reserve, you can see, spikes up quickly because a cash reserve levy of $13.7 million largely carries no spending authority. It's simply cash in the bank without the authority to spend it. That's why there's a difference between the ending balance that is called fund balance and that is called the spending authority balance. So what are the next steps? Obviously, we want to continue what's going on in the state legislature. We will, as Dr. Benson alerted to earlier, Dr. Benson is leading the formulation of a fiscal 15 budget. We will have that ongoing conversation. We'll be bringing before you the board on the 10th of March that proposed certified budget to schedule a public hearing. And finally, again, the same error repeated twice. I apologize for that. The certification of the budget would occur on the 14th of April, not the 7th of April, when the board would take action on that. So that's kind of the latest on our budget situation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Gary?
Steve, I'm I'm a little confused on, I'm looking at the chart on the unspent balance and the unspent spending authority, correct?
Is this
The unspent balance is the unspent spending authority.
That's correct.
And then the fund balance, which is the cash reserve that we actually have. I thought I heard you say that, my confusion is that I thought you said some adjustment in budget, a $6 million adjustment in budget. Why that does not have an effect on the unspent balance, the unspent spending authority, if we wouldn't see an improvement in that. We're seeing it in the cash reserve, but not the unspent balance.
Precisely, and the reason for that is that we are currently, in the current fiscal 14, we are on track to spend $6 million of spending authority reserves that we had accumulated in prior periods. When you look at fiscal 13's unspent balance of $10.6 million, and then look at the predicted unspent balance of $14.3 million, there lies the $6 million plus reduction of spending authority reserves that are currently built in to fiscal 14's budget. So if we do nothing, it will continue to move in that direction. We will continue to lose at the rate of $6 million per year in spending authority, and spending authority is based upon the finance formula of students, the amount per pupil, et cetera, et cetera. It is the authority that the state provides within that formula. So when I'm talking about a $6 million budget adjustment package of both spending reductions and increased revenue that is authorized revenue, we have that as a necessity to create a sustainable flat line, same ending balance forecast of the spending authority reserves in fiscal 15. Now, if we maintain the cash reserve levy rate, which, as you may recall, for the current fiscal year, which is $13.7 million, was an increase of $4 million over the previous year in fiscal 13, when we were looking at about a $9 million spending a cash reserve levy. We bumped that up to 13.7, and that is the major reason why we have a fund balance prediction for $6 million at the end of the current fiscal period. That's why we're in the good position that we're in. If we maintain that level of cash reserve levy, it will cause us to reach the $15 million fund balance. Now, $15 million may seem like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but it's 8% of our budget, and we're looking at something in the 8 to 10% range for sustainability long term. For those unforeseen things that may happen to us and have happened to us, the across-the-board state aid cuts is the perfect example as to why a school district should maintain a fund balance long term.
All right, Steve. Thank you for that explanation. I don't expect an answer, a complete answer this evening, but as I continue to look at that chart, I'm puzzled by, it looks like in 11, well, it looks like between, after 2012, that we then incurred this $6 million. It looks like the unspent balance stayed pretty, the unspent spending authority stayed pretty constant until 13. And then we started this $6 million spending down. And as you said, if we did not do anything, we would be a minus $2 million next year. What occurred in our budget during that 13 year, or 12-13, that started us on this slide?
There are three things that occurred. The major impact, the flood of 2008, set the stage for what was to come. And the enrollment decline that we experienced in this school district, which led the state in enrollment decline of about 6% of our certified enrollment over a 4-year period, had an enormous budgetary consequence. This is significant for the school district, coupled with historically low to zero growth rates of per pupil funding from the state legislature. These two things coupled together to make an enormous amount of pressure that takes a while to find its way into the stream because these things don't react quickly. It's like a barge on the river. You turn the wheel and it takes a while for that thing to begin to move. So what we're seeing now is a result of significant declines in enrollment and low levels of funding on a per pupil basis. And the third part of that is our desire to maintain educational quality and to maintain staffing levels that provide for that educational quality perhaps a bit longer than we might from a purely fiscal standpoint could have or perhaps should have that caused this decline of spending authority. Those three things had enormous implications to what we're at, why we're at where we're at today.
Ann?
Yeah, I was just wondering what kind of levy rate this would result in, what you have shown for FY15.
I feel very confident that we'll be able to come back to the Board of Education with a complete budget for 15 with no change whatsoever in our local property tax levy rate. And this would include the possibility of this proposed equipment breakdown insurance program, which would help enormously in taking pressure off of our general fund budget.
Well, I just wondered if one of the options we might want to consider is if the levy went down, say by 33 cents or something, that would offset the proposed PEPAL increase. So I just didn't know if something like that might be an option to look at.
I think that there's certainly more to come regarding our PEPAL levy rate. If we should have a successful vote and have the PEPAL levy rate, let's just say it is increased to $1.34 in the future, then this would be implemented in fiscal 16. This is a conversation for fiscal 16, and there's an awful lot that can happen between now and then. Our current PEPAL levy is through the end of fiscal 15. So this information, my comment regarding our property tax levy rate, is all including a 67-cent PEPAL levy that we have for sure through that point in time.
Right, so would it be worth trying to forecast what 16 might look like? Maybe not as part of this budget process, but then again, I mean, one of the challenges in districts or any kind of government-funded entity is we only have annual money, and sometimes it'd be nice if we could look ahead more than 1 year at a time and communicate that to the taxpayers as well as ourselves in trying to make decisions. And if we were looking ahead that for 15 it looks like we need this, and then if we had these assumptions, if enrollment continued to grow up at 2%, or if the state allowable growth was 4 or 6, then that would mean that for 16, then our levy rate would need to be this in order to maintain this kind of financial integrity, and then the PEPAL could kind of be funded as related to that, or we might be able to shift some property tax from operations or general fund to PEPAL. So I don't know if that's something that we can do, or we don't want to put it out there as a promise, but then again, we also, I think it's wise for us to look ahead in planning and see what, depending on what the legislature chooses, what families decide about where they send their school, all those things are going to play into it. But it might be nice to kind of look at more than a year at a time.
I think we are very sensitive to the property tax burden that our community bears to support public education. And we will do our very best to always be sensitive to that and to look at maintaining stability over the long term, including these challenges that we have in the future in fiscal 16 with the possibility of, I'll just stop at that point and just say we'll be very sensitive to that.
I'll amplify. Yes, I think you make an excellent point. And just looking at the graph, it's the cash levy reserve fund that is an issue that we could talk about. And that will be a very good strategic discussion to have when we revisit PEPAL.
John?
I just continue to be reminded about this and these conversations happen, and I don't want to go into issues with bargaining or anything, but sort of the elephant in the room is that 80% or so of this budget is salaries and benefits. We want to have the best staff. We want to pay the best staff. I want them for my own kids too. But at the same time, what you're telling me is there's only a 3.32% increase for Cedar Rapids. And I just hope through this process that all of that is understood. And I know that there are trend lines and all these things, but these have direct implications on the education of my kids and of our future in Cedar Rapids. I want the best for our kids. I want the best staff and teachers. But this plays a huge role in that. So all of those involved with that, I hope that this is something that's very clear and it does have implications for the education of all of our kids.
Other comments? You know, I do think it's commendable that we haven't cut programs at this point. We've been very diligent about keeping the high quality of programming that we have in our district, and I think that we have to continue to do that if we're going to attract students. So appreciate your report tonight, Steve. Look forward to additional information coming up. Next, I'm going to turn this over to Jill.
Thank you. I would ask the board to observe a moment of silence for two employees that were lost to our district. The first being Jackie Feller. On January 21st, the district lost a wonderful individual in Jackie. She served as the cafeteria manager at Nixon Elementary School since December of 2012. If only given a few words to describe her, the department says she is sweet, kind, loving mother and friend to all who come to mind. She enjoyed music and art, recently moved into the home of her dreams. She was a compassionate leader and important member of the Nixon team. Her passing is a great loss to our district, to the department, and to Nixon Elementary. She made a difference and will be missed. Second, on January 30th, Todd Roshar peacefully passed away. He was an important member of the Jefferson team of the food and nutrition family since October of 2012. He will always be remembered for his amazing smile and gentle way, a man very proud and dedicated to his family. They ask that we please keep his wife, children, and family and friends in your thoughts and prayers. His passing is a great loss to the department and Jefferson High School. He will be truly missed.
Okay, let's take a moment of silence. Okay, thank you, Jill. And we will keep those families in our thoughts and prayers. That concludes our meeting tonight. Thank you for joining us, and we stand adjourned.